What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected voices walks onto a daytime talk show stage and refuses to play by the rules of performative outrage? It only took 36 seconds of Sunny Hostin's opening question for Morgan Freeman to deliver a response so powerful, so unflinching, that it would send shockwaves through the entire studio and lead to the most dramatic exit in talk show history. The studio lights were bright that morning. The audience settled into their seats. Morgan Freeman walked out onto the View stage with that calm, measured presence he's known for. The applause was thunderous. Here was a man who had earned every ounce of respect through decades of brilliant work, genuine integrity, and a refusal to bow to anybody's agenda. Whoopi Goldberg welcomed him with a smile. Joy Behar cracked a joke. Everything seemed normal at first. But then Sunny Hostin leaned forward with that look in her eyes. That look that said she had come prepared not to have a conversation, but to make a statement. "Morgan, we need to talk about your recent comments," Sunny began, her voice dripping with condescension. "You said that you don't believe in reducing people to their race, that you think we should move past identity politics. Don't you think that's incredibly privileged coming from someone in your position?" The audience went quiet. You could feel the tension immediately. This wasn't a question. It was an accusation wrapped in a question mark. Morgan took a breath. His face remained calm. "I said that I believe we should see each other as human beings first," he replied, his voice steady and clear. "I've lived through real segregation, real discrimination. I've earned the right to have an opinion on how we move forward." "But Morgan," Sunny interrupted, waving her hand dismissively, "you're essentially telling people to ignore the very real systemic issues that still exist. You're telling black people, brown people, that their experiences don't matter." "That's not what I said at all," Morgan responded, his tone still measured, but with an edge now. "In fact, that's the exact opposite of what I said." Sunny wasn't done. She leaned back in her chair with a smirk. "See, this is the problem with your generation. You got yours, you made it, and now you want to pull the ladder up behind you. You want everyone else to just, what, stop talking about race? Stop fighting for equality?" The audience murmured. Some nodded along with Sunny. Others looked uncomfortable. Ana Navarro jumped in, her voice sharp. "Morgan, I have to agree with Sunny here. When you say things like that, you're giving ammunition to people who want to deny that racism still exists. You're being used by the wrong people." "I'm not being used by anybody," Morgan said, his voice growing firmer. "I speak my own mind. I always have. And I don't need you to tell me what I'm allowed to think about my own experiences." "Your own experiences," Sunny repeated, her voice mocking now. "Morgan, you're a millionaire. You live in a completely different world than most black Americans. You haven't struggled in decades. So maybe, just maybe, you're not the best spokesperson for what the community needs right now." That's when something shifted in Morgan's expression. Not anger exactly. Something deeper. Disappointment. "You don't know anything about my struggles," he said quietly. "You don't know what I've been through, what I've seen, what I've overcome. And the fact that you think success disqualifies someone from having an opinion tells me everything I need to know about your worldview." Joy Behar tried to lighten the mood. Okay. Let's all take a breath here. Morgan, I think what Sunny is trying to say is..." "I know exactly what she's trying to say," Morgan interrupted, something he rarely does. "She's trying to say that because I don't agree with her political ideology. I'm not black enough. I'm not authentic enough. I'm somehow betraying my race. I've heard it all before. It's exhausting." Sunny's face flushed. "Now you're putting words in my mouth. I never said anything about you not being black enough. But I am saying that your views are harmful. They're dangerous. When you go on television and say we should stop talking about race, you're actively hurting the progress we've made." "Progress," Morgan said, shaking his head slowly. "You want to talk about progress? Real progress comes from treating people as individuals, from judging them by their character, their actions, their contributions. Not by checking boxes and dividing everyone into groups. Not by telling people they're victims who can't succeed without your help. Alyssa Farah Griffin, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. Morgan, I actually understand where you're coming from, but nothing. Sunny cut her off. There is no but. This is black and white. Either you believe in fighting for justice and equality, or you believe in maintaining the status quo. And Morgan, right now, you're on the wrong side. The audience gasped at her bluntness. Even Whoopi shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Morgan stood up slowly. He wasn't angry. He wasn't yelling. He was simply done. I'm on the wrong side, he asked, his voice carrying that unmistakable weight. I marched. I protested. I used my platform to open doors that were closed. I did the work when it actually mattered, when there were real consequences. And now, you're sitting here, in your comfortable chair, on your television show, telling me that I'm on the wrong side, because I won't recite your talking points. Sit down, Morgan, Sunny said, her voice sharp and commanding. We're not finished here. Oh, we're finished, Morgan replied. I came here thinking we could have an actual conversation. But this isn't a conversation. This is a lecture. This is you trying to put me in my place because I committed the cardinal sin of thinking for myself. Whoopi finally tried to intervene. Morgan, come on now. Nobody's trying to put you anywhere. We're just having a discussion. Morgan turned to Whoopi, and his expression softened slightly. Whoopi, you know better. You know exactly what this is. I've respected you for years, but I'm not going to sit here and be talked down to by someone who thinks that agreeing with her is the only way to be authentic. Sunny stood up now too, her voice rising. You know what your problem is, Morgan? You've been playing respectability politics for so long that you've forgotten what it means to actually fight for something. You've become comfortable. You've become complacent. You've become exactly what the system wants you to be. The studio went completely silent. That was the line. That was the moment that crossed from heated debate into personal attack. Morgan's jaw tightened. His eyes locked onto Sunny. I fought for things before you were born, he said, his voice low and powerful. I fought when people like you wouldn't have even been allowed in this building. And I didn't do it for applause. I didn't do it for a television show. I did it because it was right. So don't you dare stand there and tell me I've forgotten how to fight. Then why are you fighting against progress now? Sunny shot back, her voice almost shouting. Why are you using your voice to tear down the people who are actually trying to make a difference? Why are you more concerned with being palatable to white audiences than with speaking truth to power? Morgan shook his head. He reached up and removed his microphone, the small pack clipped to his belt. The sound technicians looked panicked. Producers started moving toward the stage. This, Morgan said, holding up the microphone, this is what's wrong with everything. You don't want truth. You want compliance. You don't want dialogue. You want conformity. And anybody who steps out of line gets attacked, gets shouted down, gets told they're not enough. He placed the microphone on the table with a decisive click. Joy tried one more time. Morgan, please, let's just talk this through. But Morgan was already walking, not storming off, not throwing anything, just walking with dignity and purpose toward the exit. Sunny wasn't done, though. Go ahead and walk away, she called after him. That's what people like you do. You take the easy path. You don't want to do the hard work. Morgan stopped. He turned back slowly. The easy path, he repeated. The easy path would be sitting here, nodding along, saying whatever you want me to say. The easy path would be pretending that your version of activism is the only valid one. The easy path would be letting you speak for me. I've never taken the easy path in my life, and I'm not starting now. You're being incredibly disrespectful, Ana Navarro said, her accent thick with indignation. We invited you here as a guest. And I accepted as someone who thought we could have an honest exchange, Morgan replied. But there's nothing honest about this. You invited me here to ambush me, to try to embarrass me, to make an example out of me. Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I'm not playing that game. Whoopi stood up, trying to position herself between Morgan and the exit. Morgan, I'm asking you, as someone who's known you for years, please don't leave like this. Morgan looked at her with something like sadness. Whoopi, you've become part of a machine that eats people alive for having independent thoughts. I can't be a part of that. I won't be a part of that. Sunny's voice cut through again, louder now, desperate to have the last word. You want to talk about machines. You're a cog in the machine of oppression. You're doing their work for them. Every time you tell people to stop fighting, to stop speaking up, to stop demanding better, you're helping to keep the boot on their necks. The audience was divided now. Some were applauding Sunny. Others were booing. The chaos was building. Morgan turned one final time. His eyes swept across the panel. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but in the silence, it carried like thunder. I've spent my entire life trying to lift people up, trying to open doors, trying to show young people that they can achieve anything through hard work and dedication. And you're telling me that's oppression? You're telling me that's the problem? Then we have nothing left to say to each other. Good, Sunny spat out. Because I'm tired of giving platforms to people who set us back. Morgan smiled then, not a happy smile, a knowing smile. And there it is. You don't want a platform for different voices. You want an echo chamber. You want everyone to repeat the same lines, have the same thoughts, draw the same conclusions. That's not progress. That's a cult. The word hung in the air. Cult. The producers were definitely panicking now. This had gone way off script. Joy stood up, her voice pleading. Morgan, that's going too far. Nobody here is in a cult. We're just passionate about these issues. Passion is fine, Morgan said, but when your passion requires everyone to think exactly like you, when it requires silencing dissent, when it requires attacking anyone who questions the narrative, that's not passion anymore. That's something else entirely. Alyssa tried once more. Morgan, I really do think we can find common ground here. If we just... There is no common ground with someone who calls me a traitor to my race, Morgan said, gesturing toward Sunny. There is no common ground with someone who thinks that because I've been successful, my opinions are invalid. There is no common ground with someone who believes that her way is the only way. Sunny crossed her arms. I never called you a traitor. You didn't have to, Morgan replied. You said it in every other word. You said it in your tone. You said it in your contempt. I've been around long enough to know coded language. When I hear it, and you know what? I'm done decoding. I'm done translating. I'm done trying to make myself palatable to people who've already decided I'm the enemy. Anna jumped back in. Nobody thinks you're the enemy, Morgan. We just think you're wrong. And I think you're wrong, Morgan countered. The difference is, I'm not trying to shut you up. I'm not trying to get you kicked off television. I'm not trying to ruin your reputation. I'm just disagreeing with you. But apparently, in your world, disagreement is violence. Now you're being dramatic, Sunny said with an eye roll. Nobody said disagreement is violence. Then what is this? Morgan asked, gesturing to the entire setup. What do you call it when you invite someone on your show, not to have a conversation, but to publicly shame them? What do you call it when you use your platform to try to destroy someone's credibility because they won't fall in line? If that's not a form of violence, I don't know what is. The audience was in complete uproar now. Some were standing, some were shouting, some were trying to leave. Security started moving in to restore order. Whoopi raised her voice. Everybody calm down. This is still a television show. We're still on air. But Morgan was done caring about the cameras. You want to know what the real tragedy is? He said, his voice cutting through the noise. The real tragedy is that we could have had a meaningful conversation today. We could have explored different perspectives. We could have learned from each other. But instead, you chose to make this about power, about who gets to decide what's acceptable, about who gets to be the gatekeeper of blackness. And in doing so, you've proven exactly what I've been saying all along. And what's that? Sunny demanded, her face flushed with anger. That you're more interested in control than in truth, Morgan said simply. That you're more interested in ideology than in individuals. That you're more interested in winning than in actually helping anyone. Sunny laughed bitterly. Oh, that's rich coming from you. You've been winning your whole life. You have no idea what it's like for people who are actually struggling. You're right, Morgan said. I don't know what it's like to grow up in a mansion. I don't know what it's like to go to elite schools. I don't know what it's like to land a television job where I get to lecture people from on high. I only know what it's like to grow up poor in Mississippi during segregation. I only know what it's like to face real racism, real discrimination, real hatred. But sure, tell me more about struggle. The burn was so severe that even Joy winced. Sunny's face went from red to white in seconds. Anna tried to defend her co-host. That's a low blow, Morgan. Sunny has dedicated her career to fighting for justice. From a very comfortable position, Morgan noted, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with success. But don't pretend you're in the trenches when you're in a penthouse. Don't pretend you're struggling when you're thriving. And most importantly, don't use your platform to tear down people who actually came from nothing and made something of themselves. I'm not tearing you down, Sunny insisted. I'm holding you accountable. For what? Morgan asked. For having an opinion you don't like? For refusing to be your puppet? For believing in individual responsibility? For thinking that people are capable of more than you give them credit for? What exactly am I being held accountable for? Sunny stepped closer, her finger pointing. For spreading a narrative that helps oppressors and hurts the oppressed. For using your influence to undermine movements that are trying to create real change. For being selfish enough to think that just because you made it, everyone else can too. I never said everyone can make it, Morgan clarified, his patience clearly wearing thin. I said everyone deserves the chance to try. I said we should judge people as individuals. I said we should focus on character over categories. How is any of that controversial? How is any of that harmful? Because it ignores reality, Sunny practically shouted. It ignores the systems that are designed to keep people down. It ignores the barriers that still exist. It ignores the fact that not everyone has the same opportunities you had. I had no opportunities, Morgan said, his voice rising for the first time. I had nothing. I had less than nothing. I had every excuse in the world to fail, to give up, to blame everyone else. But I didn't. I worked. I persevered. I believed in myself when nobody else did. And now you're telling me that sharing that story, that message, is harmful. You're telling me that telling young people they can overcome adversity is wrong? What kind of twisted logic is that? Joy tried to moderate. I think what Sunny means is that not everyone has your strength, Morgan. Not everyone can overcome the way you did. Then we should be building people up, Morgan replied. Not telling them they're victims. Not telling them they can't succeed without government help or special treatment. We should be empowering them, inspiring them, showing them what's possible. That's what I've tried to do my entire career. And you're calling that oppression? Sunny wouldn't back down. I'm calling it naive. I'm calling it out of touch. I'm calling it a fantasy that helps you sleep at night while millions of people suffer. Morgan picked up his jacket from the chair. You know what helps me sleep at night? Knowing that I've never told anyone they couldn't achieve their dreams? Knowing that I've never used my platform to tear people down? Knowing that I've always tried to see the best in people rather than dividing them into groups of victims and villains? Can you say the same? The question hung there, unanswered. Whoopi made one last attempt. Morgan, please. Let's take a break. Let's cool off. And come back and finish this properly. Morgan shook his head. There's nothing proper about this. There never was. You knew exactly what you were doing when you booked me. You knew Sunny would come at me. You knew this would be confrontational. You wanted fireworks. Well, congratulations. You got them. But you also lost any credibility you had left. We lost credibility, Anna said incredulously. You're the one walking off a television show. I'm walking away from a setup, Morgan corrected. I'm walking away from people who think disagreement is hate. I'm walking away from the kind of toxic environment that destroys honest dialogue. I'm walking away with my dignity intact. Can you say the same when this is all over? Sunny stepped forward one more time, her voice venomous now. Your dignity? You're a sellout, Morgan. You sold out your people for Hollywood, for money, for fame, and now you're here trying to lecture us about dignity? It's pathetic. That was the final straw. Morgan turned to face her fully, his presence suddenly filling the entire stage. When he spoke, his voice was controlled, but carried the weight of decades of experience and pain. I have never sold out anyone. I have lived my life with integrity. I have used my platform to tell stories that matter, to represent people who had no representation, to open doors that were closed. I have given millions to charity. I have mentored countless young actors. I have spoken truth even when it was unpopular. And you, sitting there in your designer clothes, on your television show, with your law degree and your privilege, you have the audacity to call me a sellout. You don't have the right. You haven't earned it. And you certainly don't have the moral authority. Sunny's mouth opened, but no words came out. Morgan continued. I'm leaving now. Not because I'm afraid of this conversation. Not because I can't defend my positions. But because I refuse to participate in your performance. I refuse to be your villain. I refuse to give you the satisfaction of breaking me down so you can feel righteous. I've dealt with real enemies in my life. People who wanted to destroy me because of the color of my skin. You're not even in that category. You're just someone who's drunk on your own sense of importance. And that's sad. He walked toward the exit, his steps measured and purposeful. The studio was in complete chaos. Producers were shouting into headsets. Camera operators didn't know where to point their cameras. The audience was on their feet, some cheering, some booing, everyone talking at once. As Morgan reached the edge of the stage, Sunny's voice rang out one final time. Run away, Morgan. That's what cowards do. Morgan paused. He didn't turn around. He simply said, over his shoulder, loud enough for everyone to hear, I've never run from anything in my life. I'm simply refusing to wrestle with pigs. We both get dirty, but the pig likes it. And with that, Morgan Freeman walked off the view stage, leaving behind a panel of stunned hosts, a bewildered audience, and a moment that would be talked about for years to come. The cameras kept rolling as Sunny stood there, speechless for perhaps the first time in her career, while Whoopi tried desperately to cut to commercial. The last image before the break was Morgan's back as he pushed through the studio doors, a man who had faced down real hatred and discrimination his entire life, refusing to be lectured by people who had never walked in his shoes. He had come to share his perspective. He had been ambushed, and he had walked away with his head held high, his principles intact, and his dignity unshaken. Whatever anyone thought about the politics of the moment, one thing was undeniable. Morgan Freeman had refused to play the game. And in doing so, he had won.